Hi everybody, welcome to the first tutorial for the Boo Crew block of the month. We're going to be setting up our notebook and working on the first block, which are those cute little spiders that Amy drew for us. And so let's get started. By now everybody should have received their box. Wasn't it the cutest thing? And then you got the candy corn, so munch down on that so you have all your strength needed for this, to set this up and get started. So I suggest you go buy a notebook. This is a 1-inch binder. Just like from one of your big box stores. Right now, back to school time, they've been on sale for like 97 cents. We would have mailed you one, but it wouldn't fold up and fit in the box. So one of the things you should have noticed that you received is a spine label for your Boo Crew block of the month, and then your front and back cover. Okay, this we thought would be the front and the back. So you've probably all done these notebooks before. I'm just going to slide this little guy right in here. Fits nicely right in the front portion, and now the back cover goes right in here as well. Trickier than it looks, guys. Okay, and then here is a trick for getting your spine in. So a lot of times these little spines are hard to get in, and you can put this going either direction. I happen to like the Boo starting at the top up here, and just if you lay your notebook open, the spine slides in really nicely, which is very beneficial because this is just a regular paper that we used. So now you have your cute little book to keep your patterns in every month. So the rest of your pattern, you have the cover for this month's block, directions, the placement guide, and then the pieces in reverse and should you want to make this again. So I suggest going ahead and putting it in your notebook. You're welcome to use those little clear plastic sleeves. Might be a nice touch as well. I don't suggest using that initially on this one because you'll be using your placement guide when you put your block together. And then you have your instructions. And so every month you can put these in and keep it all nice and neat. And when you're done with your quilt, you'll have the whole thing together in case you want to make it again. Because sometimes we do make our quilts again. So what's going to happen with the rest of our tutorial, Brittany's going to show you how to build your applique units, and she's going to help you get ready to stitch that first seam, because you know there's a seam with it. It looks like sashing, but it's really the base of the block, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then once she gets that set up for you, we'll go back to the sewing machine for me to stitch it, and then she'll come back to help you finish a little bit more. We're just basically going to flip-flop back and forth between Brittany and myself, okay? So have fun.
Hey, it's Brittany now, and what I'm going to do is talk to you about the setup for making machine applique as easy as possible in terms of making your background block and getting all of your pieces ironed on and in place. So the tools that I like to use, I have my Steady Betty. This is a great surface to press on. I like to use my Steam Fast travel iron because I think it's just great to work with when you're working with little pieces. So inside your box, you'll have all your pieces. I'm not going to use those just yet. And then you have your applique placement guide. I'm going to take it out of that nice notebook, and I'm going to have it on my Steady Betty ready to use. I do like to have my Karen K. Buckley scissors. They're great because they're sharp all the way to the point, so it's really nice when you have to work with applique pieces. Every month when you get your kit, everything is pre-fused with Heat and Bond Light and laser cut. The little small pieces we typically put in a separate bag so you can get to them easy. I do want to point out that every now and then you'll have pieces that are together on like one rectangle or one square, and you'll want to trim those apart. So you just very easily with these scissors connect the straight line. So like this little triangle is slightly at an angle. So you just cut that straight line, and then you'll want to cut out the 2 straight lines here. And that frees your little monster mouth. And then I like to have a little jar. I don't have it over with me right now, but I'll use this mug. It's a little deeper than I would normally use. But what I like to do is when I open my bag, I'll put all my applique pieces in one place so I don't lose, especially the little pieces when I'm working. For future in the video, you'll see I'll bring over my real little jar that I like to use. Now I also have my light pad set up. That makes it really easy when you are using your applique placement guide. And I have my Fusimat. A Fusimat, if you don't have one, is an applique pressing sheet that is a little different. It's got sort of like little bitty bumps on it like indentions. And the theory behind it, and it really does work, it's not just the theory, is that when you're ironing the fusible onto your fabric or making your applique units on it, there's a place for that glue to sort of sink into the mat instead of going out. And you won't notice it when you're making like just a block at a time, but if you're a very avid appliquer, this really does come in handy, and it helps really keep your iron clean, which is great. So the first thing that we need to do before we can build our applique units is make our block, right? So in your kit, you have a 9x10 orange and you have a 9x3 black. So if you take a look at your instructions, it's going to instruct you to simply make 1/4 inch seam for your block. So what you want to do is make sure you're working with a really nice pressed piece. So I'm going to give these a little press. If you want to use spray starch, use just a hint of starch, because if you use too much, it really can shrink up your fabrics, and you don't want to do that. So I'm just going to gently press this. You can see even with this little travel iron, it gets really nice and hot, and there's not really a need for the starch. So I'm just pressing that. And then what I'm going to do is take this to my sewing machine, and I am going to align the 9-inch widths together. So I have my 9x3 and my 9x10, and I'm going to put them just like this together. Again, press and make sure all the pieces are nice and flat. And with a regular 50 weight thread, black in the top and bottom, I'm just going to do 1/4 inch seam right here. And then with the flash of a camera, I'll be right back to show you how we press that seam open. And just like that, I have my 1/4 inch seam. So you can see on the back, just a simple 1/4 inch seam. And what you want to do before you do any press open any seam or press it to the side at all, you do one little iron over it to set your seam. That's a fun trick that Mom taught me, and I really like it. You probably already knew that trick, but I feel obligated to say it just in case. So now what I'm going to do is press my seam towards the black. Just like that. There we go. So now we have our block ready to go. So you can see the back nice and clean and tidy. And we have the front ready to go. I actually don't need this just yet, because what we're going to do is build our applique units, but I have it ready to go. So I'm going to set it aside, and what I'm going to do, just like I showed you, I'm going to go on and get all my pieces out of the bag, and I'm going to peel the fusible from the back of all of them. So you do that too, and then we'll be back together to start building those units. Okay, so I have all of my pieces peeled, right? And now I've taken out my reversed pieces. And let me tell you why. If you are new to applique, I want to make sure that I give you as much information in this video as possible. If you're very familiar with machine applique, you can skip ahead to building the units. But for right now, let me just give you all a tip that you might really appreciate. So as you can see in the pattern, it gives us an idea of what units to build. So it says that unit 1 is going to consist of pieces 1 and 2. Unit 2 is going to be pieces 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on and so forth. So what you can do, even though the pieces are pretty easily identifiable this month, if you're new to applique, this is a really great tip. Take your piece, now these are all reversed, right? So you're going to put it where the fusible side is up, and you're going to place it over your numbered pieces. And this way, when you're building your units, you'll know that you have the right piece everywhere, right? So we'll put it here, 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 here. We have another spider. Oh, I put that one on the wrong one. Number 9, number 12. Then we have this guy, another little mouth, and then this little mouth. And I just, you know, I'm matching the pieces up. I'm not laying it on it exactly. There we go. So now we have everything where we know what number is what. So now we can start building our units. So what I'm gonna do is take my applique placement guide, and I'm going to reach over here to my cord and turn my light box on. Oh, if I can reach the cord. Sorry, everybody. I think I just popped in the view. So I have my light box on, and what I'm gonna do is take my placement guide, and I'm gonna put it right on top of that. And then there we go, I have my Fusimat over it. I have a little piece of fuzz. Get that away. So I know that the first unit I need to build are pieces 1 and 2. So it makes it really easy to go over here to my numbered outlines over here. And then I just take a look at my pressing sheet. And I think you guys can see through my Fusimat pretty well on the camera actually. And what you do is you line your pieces up perfectly on your applique placement guide. And remember, you have the Fusimat or any type of applique pressing sheet. You don't want to, of course, don't iron right on your paper. Make sure you have a pressing sheet over it. And then we're going to line up piece number 2. And you can see it goes right above it. There we go. And the tips go pretty much right to the bottom. So now I have one unit ready to iron, and I am just going to iron where it overlaps. And actually, don't iron on your light pad. Excuse me for that. Let me move my pieces out of the way. So if you iron on your light pad, you won't be happy with how your light pad turns out. So you do want to pick this up and go right over here. That's why I like to keep the Steady Betty right beside my light pad. So again, I'm just gonna press it right here. And you don't need to press for very long. You're only wanting it to secure long enough to get it over to your fabric at the end when you're building your units. So now that that unit is built, let's go to the next one. So I'm gonna move where that's out of the way, let it cool off before I move it. And let's take a gander at our pieces and what's next. So the next are gonna be pieces 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which are going to make our largest spider, right? So we're gonna have the big legs, the orange mouth, then you have your 2 eyes and the big polka dots. So I know we have this piece, then this piece, and then we have the big mouth and our 2 eyeballs. So I have my pieces collected of what I'm gonna need for this. So again, I'm gonna move these pieces out of the way. And now here's where a fun part begins. You will notice when you lay this down that your legs are actually reversed on your placement guide. That is a mistake that I made, and I sincerely apologize. And if you go to your account online, you can download another placement guide where the legs have been updated. However, don't worry. You can continue right now without getting another placement guide. You don't have to worry about printing it. I did put it there just in case you want it, but you don't need it. So what you're gonna do right now is center your spider legs where it is lined up exactly with the same straight line, and we're gonna put it in place. So the spider legs don't have to be specific. Don't worry, I promise this isn't a problem. Then you're gonna put your polka dots body, the large polka dots, and what we're gonna do is just simply press, oh, see, I almost pressed on my light box again, everybody. I'm gonna move it over right here. And then what I'm gonna do is just lightly press in the center just for a second, because all I want is for my 2 pieces to bond together. Now let's put our face on, and I will tell you it's gonna be really hard to see through 2 layers, but don't worry, because the face you can pretty much wing. He pretty much only fits in about 1 spot. So there we go. And then you have your 2 eyes right about there. Now, one thing I do want to point out is make sure that you have your fusible side down. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell on small pieces. So we're just going to, again, you guys, how funny is it getting now that I just almost want to press on my light pad every time? So we're going to move back over to our Steady Betty, and we're going to press our face right in place. Perfect. So now we have our second applique unit done. How cool is that? Now the next unit we need to make is unit 3, which are pieces 8, 9, and 10. And this guy's really easy. It's just this middle spider. So again, I'm gonna come back to my light box, give myself some room, and I'll peel these up. Let me show you what it looks like when you peel it up. So you can see you just gently pull, and voila, you have a perfect unit. So I'm gonna set that aside. And let's see if he's probably cool enough now to pull up. Yep, see, and he comes right up. So I still have plenty of fusible left to put down onto my fabric. So again, we're gonna work on this little middle guy. So I'm going to pull my pieces over here, And I need to have pieces, was it 8, 9, and 10, I believe? Let's double check. Yep, 8, 9, and 10. So let's grab him. This guy. All right, so just 3 pieces. And let me move this out of the way because I am gonna need my Steady Betty. So again, his legs on your sheet are going to be not perfect. Don't worry. All you wanna do is line the legs up centered in the body, and see that straight line of the body on the top? That's where you can line it up. Don't worry, your little guy is gonna fit perfectly. It's not affecting, and this is really the way it's supposed to look. It's your actual placement guidelines that are reversed on the legs, so don't worry. Your quilt looks just like Mom's. And then you're gonna put your body on. And because the mouth is just right in here, let me show you where the mouth goes. Because again, it's gonna be hard to see through 2 layers of fabric. I'm just gonna use the picture on the front to guide where I put the mouth. Put it right in there. And now let's iron that together, creating our 3rd applique unit. So just right over here. And again, I'm only pressing where it overlaps. I'm not like ironing my legs to the Fusimat at all. So we're gonna let that cool, and then we're gonna go to our final applique unit that we need to build, which is 11, 12, and 13, which is the little spider on the top. So just give myself some more room on my Fusimat. And let's get those pieces. You'll notice that there's gonna be 1 piece that we don't use in building a unit, and that's our little orange heart. And there's no need, because it's not part of anything, it's not touching anywhere. You can see on the placement guide, it doesn't actually touch. So just make sure that you keep that really safe and you don't lose it. So let's get these 3 pieces out and ready to use. Now you can put this piece back in your notebook so you have it for future use. So again, we're gonna line the V up. And again, our legs, I know, don't match exactly what is on your placement guide. Again, in your account, you can download the updated one and print it if you want to, but honestly, you can use the placement guide in your kit without a problem in any way, shape, or form. So again, you use that V of the spider legs at the top to line your legs up. Then we're gonna put our body right over that. And then we're going to put our mouth on. And again, it's gonna be hard to see through 2 layers, so you can just eyeball your mouth. So let's take a look at the cover and see how far that mouth is. See, that mouth is actually almost all the way at the bottom of his body. So we're just gonna put it about there, center it. That looks like a cute spider to me. What about you? So now we're gonna pull this over here. Another thing I love about the Fusimat when I'm going between my light pad and my Steady Betty is that because it's a little tacky feeling on it, like it's got like some stick to it, my pieces don't move. There are other like Teflon applique pressing sheets, which I do love to use. However, I do notice sometimes with that one, when I'm going between a light pad and a Steady Betty, sometimes my pieces shift. So that is one benefit of the Fusimat. And I say that because, you know, and you're investing in a Fusimat. They are definitely more money than the regular pressing sheet, but I think it's worth it. There's a lot of benefits that come with it. So again, I'm just pressing lightly in the middle. And ta-da! I have all of my units built. How great is that? So let's just take these, pick them right up, and just gentle with your little legs. Dee-dee-dee. How cute is that? And if it's kind of hot, shake it a little, cool it down. You don't want to burn yourself. Whoop. There we go. So now I have all my units. Let's take a look. How great is this, right? So right now it just seems like a collection of pieces. Let's put it all together now on our fabric. This is the fun part. And then next, I'm gonna hand it over to Mom to actually give you tips on stitching. I am not the stitch tip lady, that is Mom. So again, I'm gonna take my background fabric, I'm gonna make sure it's pressed nice and neat. I kind of tossed it aside while I was filming, so I do wanna give it one more little press. All right. And if you have any questions throughout this entire process, never hesitate to reach out and email us. We're always here to help. So I want to point out on the placement guide, it is going to say orange on the top, black down here. This right here is what you want to line up with your seam. So this, oh good, you can see really well through it. You're gonna center it. Now again, we gave you way more fabric than you need, so just center it where you have about equal amounts going over on all sides. And what I'm gonna do is turn this where I make sure that I'm getting that seam right on that line and that it's straight. That would be the most important part, that you have this seam right here absolutely perfect. So yep, perfect, perfect. And the seam, what I'm talking about is the actual stitched line, not the bottom of the 1/4 inch seam. This actual stitched line right here is on that line. So let's see, on the camera, can you see through? I think you can pretty much see through to my pieces. At home, you definitely can. So what I'm gonna do, and you do have an option. You could have continued on your pressing sheet to put these 3, 4 pieces together as one, or you can build it right on your fabric. It really is your choice either way. I'm gonna show you this way just because it's sort of how I felt like doing it right now. Actually, no, you know what? Let's do it this way. I'm gonna do how the pattern says. Sometimes we change our minds. So I'm gonna put it right here on the placement guide. Then I'm gonna get my big guy and put him, and what you're lining up is the body, because remember your legs were not exactly perfect on your placement guide. So just line up your body right here, and let's get these 3 pressed together. And you could go on and do this right on your fabric, but I decided to do it this way because if I make a mistake, it's easier to fix it here. So just lightly tap those where they overlap. And now we'll put our 3rd guy right on. I can see through just fine, so I'm not going back to my light box. And he just gently overlaps. Let me pull him down a little. There we go. And then I'm just gonna tap where they overlap. All right, so now let's go back to this step. So again, I'm gonna go back to lining up my line perfectly right here. Doot, doot. There we go. And what I'm gonna do is peel this entire unit up as one. And then that's just less to have to position. See, so now I have 1 full unit. Cool, huh? And then we're just gonna put them right in place. You wanna make sure that your little spider leg right here, that he's over your stand that he's on. So to me, where I like to line up again is the bodies, because remember, if you have that original placement guide, your legs are not the guide to look at. I'm gonna make sure that my bodies line up everywhere. Perfect. Looking good. All my legs are laying flat. I'm happy with the position here. So now it's time to really press into place. So I'm gonna gently pull this back up here. And ta-da! This is the real time. This is when you're really gonna apply the heat. And you'll hold it for about 3-5 seconds. It really doesn't take very long. If you iron too long, you actually can kind of overset the heat and bond. So don't go crazy with your ironing. It just needs to hold it in place for you to be able to easily sew it. So there we go, just like that. So again, the tip that I recommend is make sure that that leg stays on top of your little base down here. So then the last piece to put in place is our little heart. Easy peasy. You really don't even need to use the placement guide for this. Just put it centered right on top. Come back up to your pressing sheet and boom, your heart is on. So just like that, you have all your pieces in place. Now I went really slow because I want to make sure that I cover every step. When you're doing this at home, I bet you're much faster than me on camera. So you have everything ready to go, and you can now put this back in your notebook, and it's time to sew. So I'm gonna pass the baton back to my mom, Julie, and she is gonna give you some fantastic stitch tips for working with a 30 weight thread in your needle and a 50 weight thread in your bobbin, and then the classic buttonhole / blanket stitch to get the perfect outcome on your first block.
Hey everybody. Okay, so Brittany has put the video back on me, and I'm going to give you some tips for stitching the spiders. Okay, now I stitched everything in black except for 2 parts, and you can do it how you like, but I stitched the yellow on the eyeball with yellow thread, and I stitched the orange mouth with orange thread. If you want to stitch it all with black, you can. If you want to make the colors match, you can stitch with matching colors. Sometimes it's fun to have the accent with the black. It makes it a little bit more whimsical. Maybe not, just depends on what you like. So it's your quilt, you can do it how you like, but this is how I did it. Okay, now one of the tips I want to let you know first, when it comes to stitching the little heart, well, let me back up. First, you want to stitch from what's in the most back first, just like you do when you're putting your applique pieces on. You put down the pieces that are in the back first. I like to stitch the pieces from the back up, and that way I feel that the ends of your threads are a little more secure, unless you're going to be good and tie them in a knot in the back like we should. So that being said, I want to talk to you about the heart on top. You can stitch that at whichever point you want to. However, this heart is orange and it's on a really strong orange background, so it's kind of hard to see. So Brittany, if you can come into this and look at this really closely, what I have in my hand here, this is a Sew Line chalk pencil. You see it has a pink little chalky edge to it. That's what I use, and I just put a light line around here. See, I've done it already on part of this. It just gives me a little bit of contrast when it comes to stitching, and I'm going to stitch this in black. So that little chalk line will be hidden. It won't ever show, whereas like if I did this around the yellow here, it would show, and I'd really have to kind of work to get it off, and I don't want to have to do that. So I only use it in places where I know that it's going to really not show and be covered by the black thread in this case. So that's what I'm going to do there, but that's a tip so that you can see where you're stitching and where to guide your machine as you go around it, okay? So nice little pin to have. And then you need a stabilizer behind for your stitching. I like to use a deli sheet. This is like a waxed paper on one side and plain paper on the other. And I just put this under my piece, kind of center it on here, and I've got it for the whole get-go. Now what I have my machine threaded with is black, and like I said, I'm going to start from the bottom up. So I'm going to start with some of my little legs. Now these little legs are very small. If you have a sewing machine where you can control the stitch width and make it narrow, you want to go for a narrower stitch and maybe a little bit closer together. It's going to secure your legs down a little bit better than if you were using a larger stitch. If you use like a 3 or even a 2.5 width on your stitch, it possibly would go all the way over for these legs, because some of these legs are really skinny. You know, spiders have skinny legs, unlike some of us. So anyway, be careful with the width of your stitch. So in this particular case, I'm going to go with 1.5 by 1.5. That's really small. This machine will accommodate that. Some machines won't, but try to choose a stitch that will go as small as you can. If you don't have a stitch that goes small enough to make you happy, you can always straight stitch into your leg. Now if your leg is really skinny and you can't like give it a nice little margin from the edge, you may just want to stitch one length in and then back stitch on top of that all the way back out. Okay, so let me show you. Do we want to show stitching, Brittany?
Yeah, everyone, we're going to pause and we'll be back on the other side of the sewing machine.
Okay, everybody, we're ready to stitch, and I'm going to start with this leg over here. And I have my machine set on 1.5 by 1.5, which is very small. It's going to be a nice stitch, I believe. And I also have an open toe foot on my machine. This gives me, see all that wideness space in there? Where I can really see where I'm going to put my needle. So the first thing I do is I put my needle right there where I'm going to know I'm going to be in the right spot. I'm going to slow my speed down. Now I sew with my fingers. I don't know that everybody likes to do this, but I think once you learn how to do this, you will be so happy. Okay, so you want to make sure that your needle is going to be on the outer side of your black line, and then you come down. I see that the width of that biting in. I'm going to speed this up just a little bit so maybe you can actually tell when it takes the bite in. You'll be able to see it when we do the mouth. I'll show you the mouth in just a minute. Okay, now see, there we go. And I'm gonna move this around. Sometimes when I'm doing just a tiny little area like this little 1/8 of an inch on his feet, I just manually do it by a single stitch. Okay, see how that's jumping in there? And it's really gonna give us a nice coverage. I'll speed that up a little bit. You just wanna make sure that your needle is biting into your fabric at the very outer edge of your line of your leg. And sometimes when I'm doing a little point, I go like that. Oops, let me get these scissors out of the way. And please note, I do have my deli paper underneath as my stabilizer, and that really does help make a difference. If you were going just through the fabric, not so great. And I'm going to use my automatic cutter. What I normally would do is I would have my thread like this, and then I pull it to the back and I tie a little knot. But for purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to continue to use my cutter and snip my little threads.
And we have a video I can link to that where you show exactly what you're talking about with that tying off in the back.
Yeah. Now see what happens when you stitch their feet. This is one of the reasons I love machine applique. It gives the piece a little more definition. See how flat it is?
It really does. Look at that.
Yeah, it gives them like dimension.
Up.
It plumps his little legs up. Okay? So now we're going to go to, let me stitch this little smiley mouth up here on this happy little top.
And you're just doing a few demos of stitching. You would stitch all the legs.
I would stitch all of the legs, and then I would, well, you could start with this purple and come around, and then you could do the black here because we use black on that as well. And then I would do all the legs, you know, and then I would do the accent pieces on top, and then I would do this guy outside, and then I would do the outside of this one because this one's on top, and I would do around this black spider at the top. But I'm just to show you how tiny stitching is, I'm going to show you this how it looks doing a curve up here on this mouth. Okay, so when I start on a curve, on a piece, I try to find the most inconspicuous place where I can start where it's going to look good when it comes to the end. You know, if I started in the middle down here, my stitches are going to be a random length. I don't know that they're going to come out even. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to start kind of in a...
So I'm going to start up here in this little point here, just because it's going to be easier to come down. So let me get my hand in here, Brittany. I always use my hand wheel to get my first stitch down and lined up. So there I am right there, and I'm going to do this. Now see how wide that came in? That's my 1.5, so that's really on some of the tiny legs, it's going to be really tricky. Okay, now.
But you can again always do just one straight seam.
Yeah.
Down the middle.
Now guys, I have needle up, needle down on this machine, and probably most of you do on your machines. It's very helpful. I also have a knee lift. I would encourage you to use your knee lift if you can manage to do it.
I was going to say, when you're pivoting, no one can see, but you are using your knee lift to lift your foot.
Yeah, but they can see my hands aren't moving. I'm just willing it very hard to do. I have total control over this machine.
Knows you.
Yes, this machine knows what I want. No, that's not the case.
It does know you so much the buttons are worn off.
Yeah, see, look, guys. Start, nope, gone. Arrow
Needle
up
turn,
and down.
Yeah, like all these are.
Cutter, they're gone. But anyway, this machine has been used a lot. My machine at home is still hanging in with its buttons. I have a really nice machine at home, too. I have machines everywhere. Actually, I have machines all over Tallahassee, don't I?
You do. My house, Grandma's house, your house, the office.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to come.
And one thing to point out, I think you said it, but you always pivot with your needle down.
Yeah, because you can't swing around very well when it's not in the air, up in the air. Now, I will tell you that this, let me take these glasses off. I think I can see this better without my glasses.
Do you ever wear your magnifiers for stitching? Is that what you had on?
Yeah, that's what I had on, but I wasn't enjoying them today. I also, on one of my machines at home, I have a magnifier that swings around. It's an attachment that goes on my machine, and I think a lot of machines have that now. And you can get different strength powers of the magnifier. That's especially helpful when you're doing machine applique as well. So I didn't even know my machine had that as an option until I saw someone somewhere with a machine like mine. I was like, where'd you get that? I need that. And it really is helpful. See, so this is coming along, and it's doing pretty good because I want to be able to see the difference. You know, now this one's going to do pretty much what I don't like. See, I knew that would happen.
Where the stitches line up and almost look like one.
Yeah, I don't think that's as much fun as it is when they're...
I will say that was a challenge on the machine embroidery this month to make sure no one's mouth looked toothy.
Yeah, but you can use the mouse and click and move it, can't you? Move the stitches?
I sure can.
Yeah, I thought I did. You could. I told somebody you did that.
I did.
See?
It was your idea.
Look at that. Look how that did. That did not do... It's just not as cute. But it's just a little spider, and in the grand scheme of things on this whole quilt,
No one will
it's
see
not
that
going to
one
be
stitch.
a problem. Now this part of the spider is the part that we gave you as a welcome kit. So a lot of you maybe went ahead and made your little pin cushion or bowl filler and had some fun working on this and already experienced 8 legs.
Next month is really easy to stitch, I think. We kind of started you off with the hard legs.
Next month is Frankenstein.
Super cute. He's like a sporty Frankenstein.
He's not too scary.
I forgot his real name. Frankie or something? Do you remember?
I don't remember what Amy named him.
It's in one of our videos. We told you the name of all of them. I should start putting that on the patterns every month.
Yeah, you have to.
Oh, I did for this month. It's called Itsy Bitsy.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are almost to the end again.
And here, I'll zoom back out so you see Mom's hand motions. She really does use the buttons.
Yeah, I use them a lot. It does not hurt your machine, despite what some people might think.
It's meant to be pushed. Push your buttons.
Okay, so there we have that. And again, see, I'm not like how that did. That looks like one stitch. Not a fan of that, but that's just how it worked
when you
out.
pull back, no one's gonna notice
Yeah, when
that.
you're out like that, nobody knows. Okay,
Yeah.
so now I showed you on that because I used black thread.
Are you gonna show us the heart?
I'm going to do the heart right now because I'm still in black thread mode, and I do have this traced with my chalk pencil, but I'm going to give it a little more right here. I don't know, some of you may be able to see and discriminate this a little bit better than I can, but these oranges are pretty close in color, and so it's really difficult, I think.
And it's really crazy to see how different it looks once it has the black stitching on it. Because right now you don't really see the heart.
It's kind of flat.
Yep.
So now we're going to put this, and again, I'm going to sneak my arm in here. I just want to line my needle up right here. And once you've been doing applique on your on your machine long enough, you'll know exactly how it's going to behave, if it's going to take a couple stitches in place. Now this, I'm going to make it be a little bit further apart. I'm going to take it to 2 and 1.5 by... I'm going to leave the bite in, I want to leave the bite in at 1.5, and I want to change my length to 2. So it's a little bit further apart. Now like my machine at home is has the capability to go to like 0.5 on the bite end. That's a little bit too narrow because it's not going to hold your piece as well. So it's kind of a fine line. You'll have to determine, and really 1.5 on my machine may be different than it is on your machine, so you're going to have to play around a little bit to decide.
I was going to say for the machine embroidery, the smallest we went was 1.6.
Yeah, it just depends on your machine and how it looks. Now, another thing I want to tell you is I do have 30 weight sulky in my needle, and I have 50 weight in my bobbin. I never on any of my machines have any difficulties with my tension. But I always want to keep my piece where it's biting in at a 90-degree angle, which is why I pivot a lot and use my needle up, needle down button for making a stitch like this. because it's too hard to stop and start, especially if you're not using your finger to steer. If you're using your foot pedal, you know, sometimes those
I
foot
don't really know how
pedals,
you could do it with a foot pedal.
well, you can. Sometimes they just don't do what you want. They don't stop as fast. You think it's going to stop, and then it doesn't. Now, this is really, I probably would have liked this if my bite into this was a little bit larger, but this is what I did.
So maybe a 2 and a 2?
Yeah, maybe 2 by 2. But, you know, it all depends on what you like.
And you can always keep a little scrap. So test your stitch before you go on your real piece.
Yeah, like you'll start to learn what you did, but I do suggest, I used to always keep a little notebook by my machine so that I would know exactly what stitch I used. Now, some of my fancier machines, they remember it for me,
Oh,
which
that
is
is
great.
fancy.
Yeah, that's great.
Let's take a look, everybody.
Well, let me snip this little thread because I can't stand threads hanging
Oh,
around.
I think that looks cute. What do you guys think? Isn't he cute?
See, it's a little bit tiny, but it looks
so
good.
Cute.
And see, now you cannot see my chalk.
Nope, your chalk is gone.
My chalk line is gone, but it really did help me in being able to see where I was headed.
And so now you can just go on through and sew all your cute pieces.
Do you want me to sew a leg with a straight line?
Yeah, let's just show, in case you don't want to do the buttonhole stitch, let's show you how you could do, and this can apply to not just the legs, but any of the pieces.
Any of the pieces if you
You just
want.
go a little bit in with a straight line. So
If
let's
I'm
take a
doing
look.
a straight line, now this, on this machine, 3.5 is my needle position in the center, and 2.4, I've lengthened my stitch a little bit. Normally if I'm doing seaming with this machine, I use 2.2, but I'm going to go with 2.4 on this because the closer it is, or the tinier your stitch, the closer the needle is piercing into it, obviously, and that's going to make the hole a little bit larger in your fabric. And we do have a larger hole to accommodate our 30 weight thread because that's why we're using a larger needle. But by that same token, if you have a really thin piece that you're stitching,
like these legs.
Yeah, you run the risk of kind of shredding your and we don't want shredded legs.
So show us what you
I'll
doing.
show you on this leg up here. Let's just do this little leg right up here at the top. Okay, so ideally, this is how I would start. Let me get my hand in here, Brittany. And I'm going to slide that over to right there. Now see, I'm leaving, I would call this a very 1/16 of an inch or maybe a scant 1/8.
Barely
right
wider than a needle, really.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I'm going to bring this in here. I'm just going to stitch right down to, you kind of have to guess on, whoop, see, I don't like that. That's too far. Now, one wonderful thing about this black, and this machine, when it does a reverse, it takes 3 in place. But anyway, what can we say? But, you can kind of do like a little straight stitch at your point if you can't get the needle exactly where you want it. But this black fabric, and this is one of the reasons I chose this super black. It's called Bellow Super Black from Moda. It is so black that your black thread does not even show. So you really can't see this thread on here. So if you have to do a weird, funky little back stitch like I just did,
no one will be the wiser.
No one will ever know. So now I'm going to come out there and come back in. Now, I mean, you can see your thread a little bit, but overall, not so much. See there? And now
So
we're
you're
gonna,
just coming back in on the same leg.
yeah, I'm kind of coming around, and now I'm back to the back.
And let
or
me
the
get
beginning.
a close up for all of y'all.
Let me see if I can. Let me slide this back under here so you get the light.
Yeah, let me get in.
Is that helping or making it
Oh,
worse?
you know, you really can't see. You can see the stitching, but
A tiny bit. I can see it with my naked eye, but on the camera through your lens, I can't really see
yeah,
it.
I'm getting as close as I can, everybody.
But that's going to secure your leg down enough. And again, it gives it a little more dimension, which is fine, just like it did down here with your blanket stitch. There we go.
There's the blanket.
I do think the blanket stitch is a little more fun. I love blanket stitch.
It does seem to add more dimension.
Yes. So,
But either way, your quilt is going to be so stinking cute. So just make sure you have fun making it.
now, do we need to talk about doing the eyeball?
If you want to, give a little tip for doing a circle.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to show you this, and I would not do this except for demonstration purposes, but if you can envision on a circle, especially tiny circles, that you have a dot right here in the middle, like a wheel with a spoke and, what's the middle called? A hub, and then you have spokes coming out, right? So, you have that little, you can even do a visual dot, like if you have one of these little chalk pencils, do it. I'm going to pop this back to my blanket stitch. I'm going to go with 2 by 2. It is small, but I think that'll still be cute. So, let me get my little thread back here where I want it. And I'm going to start.
When you do circles, that's when for me, it clicked on how to understand my stitches pointing towards the center.
Okay, and see, this machine is doing its little happy. I'm going to tack your stitch down for you, you know. So, what you want to, like, I know that dot is kind of under my foot right here, hidden under my foot, but you want to keep in mind that when your stitch bites in, you want it to be, you're kind of keeping it perpendicular to the edge, but you're aiming for that dot, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you always want that line to point to the center.
See, so now it's time to pivot again. Now, and this is also another reason I can tell you why I choose a blanket stitch that I choose, where it stitches a couple tiny stitches on the outside, is because I feel that it gives you way more control. If this was pulling my feed dogs back and forth to make the outer edge, which is how a typical blanket stitch always did, you would not have, it's hard, you would end up with offshoots going out into the background of your circle, which on this particular piece wouldn't matter, but on other things it matters a lot. And I've been told by a lot of our customers that they're not so keen on doing little bitty circles. So that's why we use a lot of buttons for eyeballs, especially with this particular little guys.
Yeah, the 13th month, you all get like, what, 40, 50 buttons, something crazy.
There's a lot of eyeballs and stuff. But buttons are such a cute accent on quilts, especially with applique, and especially with eyeball situations, you know. I mean, what better thing could there be? Now, I happen to know that this machine would take a bite in right now.
And that would be right on your other stitch.
Well, it'd be really close to it. They'd be close like this. I don't like that look, so I'm going to cut this right here, which is,
And let's take a look at your perfect stitches.
yeah, I think I did pretty good.
Oh, yeah. See, so you can see they're all pointing to that center.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, Mom. Looks wonderful.
Thank you. And I think that this, I think we do have black buttons on this, don't we?
I think it still does.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I know the upper two spiders get buttons.
I think it might get a button here too. I'm not sure. But anyway, this little dot of chalk will come off, or no one would notice it, even if, you know.
Well, Mom,
So,
that was helpful.
was this
Thanks.
a good little tutorial, you guys? I think you could do it. I hope you have fun doing this. I did. I love applique. I love machine applique, hand applique. I just love applique.
And if y'all have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the two of us. We're always happy to help.
I want to stitch right here.
Okay, well, the phone's going to die, so.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye, everybody.